The Putnams were a large and influential family in Salem Village, owners of substantial lands. Outside of family circles, they're in part known today for their role in numerous witchcraft accusations during the Salem Witch Trials. Welcome to The Thing About Salem. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
I'm Sarah Jack. We're going to examine the many roles played by Salem Village's Putnam family in the Salem Witch Trials.
The Putnam family in Massachusetts began with John Putnam and his wife Priscilla Gould. They had settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in Salem by 1641, when John was granted 100 acres of land in an exchange for 100 acres that he had previously been granted. So they had already been there by 1641. So today we're going to talk about three branches of the Putnam family from three sons of John Putnam and Priscilla Gould. You have the older son was Lieutenant Thomas Putnam, followed by Lieutenant Nathaniel Putnam, and then Captain John Putnam, who's known as John Putnam Sr. when the Salem Witch Trials come around because he's older than another John Putnam. This gets a little confusing, but we'll sort that out for you. So Captain John Putnam Sr., let's start with him. He was born in about 1627 and died in about 1710. He testified with his wife, Rebecca Prince Putnam. They both testified against George Burroughs, who had lived with them at one time. And they testified about his relationship with his wife and his wanting her to keep his secrets. And then John and Rebecca Putnam both signed the petition in support of Rebecca Nurse. One of Captain John Putnam's children was Jonathan Putnam. He lived from about 1659 to 1736, and he testified against several people in the Salem Witch Trials, but signed the Rebecca Nurse petition, and so did his wife, Lydia Whipple Putnam. His sister, Priscilla Putnam, married Joseph Bailey, who was a brother of a previous Salem Village minister, James Bailey, and Joseph Bailey testified against John and Elizabeth Proctor. Captain John Putnam Sr.'s brother, Lieutenant Nathaniel Putnam, another son of John Putnam and Priscilla Gould, he was born about 1619 and lived to 1700. He testified against Sarah Buckley, Elizabeth Fosdick, Elizabeth Payne, and John Willard, but he signed the Rebecca Nurse petition. He was also part of the Daniel Wilkins coroner's inquest after Daniel Wilkins, who was a teenage afflicted boy, passed away in 1692. So Nathaniel Putnam weighed in on the cause of death. Nathaniel's wife was Elizabeth Hutchinson, who's my ninth great grandaunt. She's the sister of Joseph Hutchinson Sr., the guy who donated the land for the Salem Village Meeting House. Now, this part gets interesting because Nathaniel Putnam's one son, Benjamin, lived about 1664 to 1715. He signed the Rebecca Nurse petition, and then after the witch trials, he took in Dorothy Good, who we've talked about on our show, The Thing About Witch Hunts, before, with Rachel Chris Stone of the Salem Witch Museum, who wrote a fabulous article about Dorothy Good, did some great research. And so we learned that Benjamin Putnam took her in. And then his son, Nathaniel Putnam, named after Grandpa, he lived 1686 to 1754. He took in Dorothy Good after his father Benjamin passed away in 1715. And Dorothy Good Jr., the daughter of Dorothy Good, was indentured to him as a domestic servant. Now, Lieutenant Nathaniel Putnam had another son. This was Captain John Putnam. He's referred to as Junior. He's not the son of a John Putnam, but he's younger than the other John Putnam that we talked about before. So anyways, we'll just call him John Putnam Jr. here. He lived 1657 to 1722. He testified against George Burroughs, Rebecca Nurse, Mary Estey, and Sarah Cloyce. And his wife, Hannah Cutler, joined in testifying against Rebecca Nurse, Mary Estey, and Sarah Cloyce. Now, going back to the children of John Putnam and Priscilla Gould, we have Lieutenant Thomas Putnam. Now, his family was very involved in the Salem Witch Trials. He himself, he lived from 1615 to 1686, so he wasn't around for the witch trials. He married first Anne Holyoke, and then later on he married Mary Varon. He had 8 children with Anne and then 1 with Mary. And there's a lot of friction between his children with Anne and then his one child, Joseph Putnam. You may have heard of him. He's the one child that Thomas had with Mary Varon. And there was an inheritance dispute because of this. But so Lieutenant Thomas Putnam, he had a daughter named Anne who married a man named William Trask. They had a daughter, Sarah Trask, born about 1673. She testified against Mary Estey, John Willard, and Mary Whitridge. Her sister, Sarah Putnam, signed the Rebecca Nurse petition. Another sister, Deliverance Putnam, married Jonathan Walcott in 1685 and was the stepmother of the afflicted girl, Mary Walcott, who was one of the ones at the center of the afflictions and the accusations. Lieutenant Thomas Putnam and Anne Holyoke, they had another daughter, Mary, who may have died young, a daughter, Elizabeth, who married Joshua Bailey, another brother of one-time Salem Village minister James Bailey. Prudence Putnam married William Wyman, and they had no known role in the witch trials. Now we get to a son of Lieutenant Thomas Putnam. This is Deacon Edward Putnam. He's a deacon of the Salem Village Church. He lived 1654 to 1747, a very long life. He testified against several people, and his wife was named Mary Hale. Now we come to the star of the show, where that's how I think he thought of himself. Sergeant Thomas Putnam, son of Lieutenant Thomas Putnam. So you see already, he's a lower rank than his father. He's not quite living up to the standards of his father. He inherits less money than he thinks he's worth. But he lived from 1652 to 1699. So when the Salem Witch Trials happened, he was about 40 years old. He complained against 35 people. This is going to the magistrates to swear out complaints to have people arrested. He did that 35 times. He testified himself against 17 people, and he recorded 120 depositions. A lot of them were of his own wife, his daughter, his niece, Mary Walcott. These were some of the core accusers, and he was writing depositions for them. And so Sergeant Thomas Putnam, he was married to Anne Carr Putnam. She lived 1661 to 1699. They both died about 6 years after the witch trials ended. Anne Carr Putnam, she was an afflicted person. Her daughter, Ann Putnam Jr., we'll talk about in a second, she was also afflicted first, but then her mother caught it. And also their maid, Mercy Lewis, was afflicted. So you had 3 afflicted women in that household with Sergeant Thomas Putnam. So that must have been a scene just to see all the fits happening, the nightmares, wrestling. Anne Carr Putnam says she wrestled with Rebecca Nurse. She accused Rebecca Nurse of murdering 14 people. She testified against a whole bunch of other people. Ann Putnam Jr., let's talk about her. She's born about 1679 and dies in 1715. She was the first afflicted person outside of the parsonage, so outside of Samuel Parris's household. She's the first one to come down with anything. She testified against many people and was always in the courtroom making a commotion. But in 1706, she apologized when she wanted to become a member of the Salem Village Church. And Minister Joseph Green, who had replaced Samuel Parris, he got up and he read this apology while she stood by him. And she was accepted into the church. And finally, we come to Joseph Putnam. Now, he's the special boy, who was the son of Lieutenant Thomas Putnam's second wife, Mary Varon. And Joseph Putnam, he makes out really well in the inheritance from his father, which makes Thomas Putnam very jealous. But Joseph Putnam, he married Elizabeth Porter, and the Porters also are supposedly those great rivals of the Putnams economically in Salem Village. The Porters are more of a merchant family, and the Putnams are more of a farming family, but they're the wealthiest families in Salem Village at the time. And Joseph Putnam, you may know him from the legend that says that he kept his horse saddled at all times during the Salem Witch Trials so that he could make his escape with his wife if either of them got accused of witchcraft, which he thought might happen because he was opposing the witch trials. And he signed the Rebecca Nurse petition. And he's also the father of a famous Revolutionary War general, Israel Putnam, Old Put, as they call him, who had lived in Connecticut and answered the call on April 19th, 1775, when the Lexington and Concord happened. George Washington actually made Israel Putnam a major general, so he was a pretty significant leader in the Revolution.
It's so tempting to point to the Putnam name and say they were the villains of the Salem Witch Trials. But it's very clear it was a huge family, and it was really a mixture of behaviors, some causing lots of strife and trouble and really going hard for the witches, others defending them, others we don't really know where they stood. It's a complicated history, and it goes to show that not everyone involved in the witch trials was the same. Many people played multiple roles, sometimes accusing, sometimes defending. Many people did both in the course of this year, and lots of people changed their minds about the witch trials over time. Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily YouTube course.
You're about to embark on something unique. We've spent years researching the Salem Witch Trials from primary sources, and now we're bringing you the story day by day in a video course that follows the actual timeline of the 1692 and 1693 history.
Each daily video is bite-sized, just a few minutes covering what happened on that day or exploring key topics that help you understand the context. You can watch as we release them or binge a full week at once.
Here's what makes this different. We've built a full course around these videos that will grow your expertise. Whether you want to just watch casually or dive deep with assignments and activities, you can engage at whatever level works for you.
Every week, we release Standard Edition and Student Edition workbooks and a blog post on AboutSalem.com. The blog recaps the week's content and gives you the big picture. The workbook is where the real learning happens if you want to go deeper.
The workbook has fill-in-the-blank summaries, reflection questions, vocabulary building, quote scavenger hunts, and 4 weekly challenges. You'll make predictions, practice citing evidence, write character journals, and share what you've learned.
We also have a weekly podcast, The Thing About Salem, that explores topics beyond the daily timeline. The workbook includes optional activities for the podcast episode too.
As you progress, you earn achievement badges you can share on social media. Start with hashtag Salem Daily Student. Track your weekly progress with hashtag Salem Week 1, hashtag Salem Week 2, and work toward mid-course badges like Salem Daily Researcher and completion badges like hashtag Salem Daily Grad.
And here's something special. If you're descended from someone involved in the Salem Witch Trials, like we are, We have a parallel descendant track with its own badges and recognitions. You can honor your family's connection while learning the history.
No matter when you're watching this, you can start anytime and work at your own pace. All the published videos, blogs, and workbooks are always available. We're releasing them weekly following the 1692 timeline during 2026 to 2027. But you don't have to keep up. Go at your own speed.
Head to aboutsalem.com to download this week's workbook and read the blog. All the resources, recommended books, and ways to support this nonprofit work are linked there.
This is a 75-week journey covering all of 1692 and 1693. Whether you're doing the full course or just following along, you're part of a community exploring this history together.
So welcome. We're glad you're here. Let's dive into the Salem Witch Trials together.
See you tomorrow.